This is Gender Perspectives on Signature TV. Thank you for joining me on another episode of thought-provoking conversations concerning gender in society. Well, I am UCHENNA, CHIMDI-OLUOHA, and I'll start this conversation with a question. What does it say about our world when someone's gender identity can dictate their safety, opportunity, and success? Well, ponder on this while we go on a quick break. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the program. This is Gender Perspectives on Signature TV. And I hope you pondered on the question I asked before we went on a break, because it leads us to our topic today, which is on sexism and gender discrimination. Now, what is this sexism? This refers to prejudice or discrimination based on a person's gender, and it often manifests through beliefs or behaviors that suggest one gender is inferior or superior to another. While gender discrimination is the unfair or unequal treatment of individuals based on their gender identity or expression. And this includes denying opportunities, imposing different standards, or even enabling harassment. Before we go further, let's look at what our background report has for us.
Sexism and gender discrimination continue to pose serious challenges to achieving social equity and justice across the globe. These issues are deeply embedded in cultural, institutional, and systemic frameworks that have evolved over centuries, resulting in unequal treatment of individuals based on their gender identity or sex. While there has been notable progress in advancing gender equality, many barriers remain that limit opportunities, violate rights, and perpetuate harmful stereotypes, particularly for women, girls, and gender-diverse individuals. At its core, sexism is the belief that one sex or gender is inherently superior to another. It manifests in attitudes, behaviors, and practices that disadvantage individuals, often women and non-binary people, based solely on gender. Gender discrimination, on the other hand, refers to the unjust or prejudicial treatment of individuals because of their gender identity or expression. This can take many forms, including denial of employment opportunities, unequal pay, and tolerance of harassment or violence. Historically, sexism was institutionalized through laws, social customs, and religious doctrines. Women were denied basic rights such as voting, owning property, or receiving education in many societies. These legal restrictions were reinforced by cultural norms that defined women's roles as subordinate to men. Although many of these laws have since been overturned, the underlying biases continue to influence societal structures. In the contemporary world, sexism and gender discrimination are particularly evident in the workplace. Despite increased female participation in the labor force, significant wage gaps persist. Moreover, women and gender-diverse individuals are underrepresented in leadership roles and in male-dominated fields such as science, technology, engineering, and finance. Beyond pay and representation, harassment remains a serious issue, with many individuals facing gender-based bullying and inappropriate behavior that is often overlooked or inadequately addressed. The educational sector is another area where gender-based inequality is evident. In various regions, girls still face barriers to accessing quality education due to poverty, traditional gender roles, or early marriage. Even in more developed educational systems, gender biases in teaching materials and teacher expectations can hinder girls' academic and professional ambitions. Non-binary and transgender students often encounter discrimination or a lack of support, which affects both their academic performance and mental health. Healthcare systems also reflect systemic gender disparities. Historically, medical research has prioritized male physiology, leading to inadequate understanding of women's health issues and treatments that may not account for gender differences. Transgender and non-binary individuals frequently report being denied care or facing discrimination from healthcare providers, further exacerbating health disparities. Furthermore, legal and political systems do not always provide adequate protection or representation. Although many countries have enacted laws prohibiting gender discrimination, enforcement remains inconsistent. Women are still significantly underrepresented in politics, and gender-based violence often goes underreported and inadequately prosecuted. Structural barriers and societal stigmas continue to silence victims and shield perpetrators. Several key factors contribute to the persistence of sexism and gender discrimination. Cultural norms and traditional gender roles remain powerful forces in shaping behavior and expectations. Media portrayals often reinforce stereotypes, while institutional bias in workplaces, schools, and legal systems can create environments that marginalize women and gender minorities. Moreover, a lack of accountability, both legally and socially, allows discriminatory behavior to persist with little consequence. Despite these challenges, there have been meaningful efforts to address gender inequality. Legal reforms promoting equal pay, anti-discrimination protections, and parental leave policies are increasingly common. Grassroots movements and non-governmental organizations have played vital roles in raising awareness and advocating for gender-sensitive education. In the corporate world, many companies are adopting diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives to create more inclusive work environments. On a global level, the United Nations has committed to achieving gender equality through Sustainable Development Goal 5, which aims to empower all women and girls by 2030. Sexism and gender discrimination are deeply rooted issues that continue to affect individuals across all aspects of life. While significant strides have been made toward achieving equality, the journey is far from complete. Addressing these challenges requires continued advocacy, education, policy reform, and cultural change. Only through collective and sustained effort can we hope to create a more equitable and inclusive society for people of all genders.
It is important to note that sexism and gender discrimination are interconnected, in that sexism is the underlying belief, system, or attitude that one gender is superior to others, and it includes stereotypes, biases, and assumptions about what individuals should be like based on their gender, while gender discrimination is the action or behavior that results from sexist beliefs, which means that this is the practical manifestation of sexism, where individuals are treated unfairly, unequally, or denied opportunities based on their gender identity or expression. And this can manifest in various forms, both overt and subtle. Like in the workplace, this may be seen in wage disparities, lack of representation in leadership roles, and even sexual harassment. And additionally, gender biases in hiring and promotion often hinder career advancement. Beyond institutional settings, sexism is evident in everyday life, from the media that objectifies both male and female to cultural norms that dictate how people should dress, speak, or behave based on their gender. And these social cues reinforce harmful expectations and limit personal freedom. To discuss further on this, we have here in the studio Ambassador Dr. Chinemerem-Anyi. She is the founder, Global Sisterhood Alliance, and Nnamdi Nwachukwu. He is a data analyst and an economist. Welcome to the program. It's my pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So let's just get right into our conversation of the day. We're pretty much familiar with the word sexism and gender discrimination. So when you hear that, what is the first thing that comes to your mind?
Well, when I hear sexism and gender discrimination, sometimes one could say they're interrelated, but there's still a distinct line. While sexism is the feeling of, we might want to call it superiority complex, where one feels he is more superior to another, maybe another gender. A gender thinks he's more superior to another gender. Then gender discrimination is about the action. I think why sexism is a feeling of belief, it now feeds an action which becomes gender discrimination. And that the action is a way of maybe edging somebody out of an opportunity, a job, or stopping somebody, which is basically based on the person's gender.
Yeah, I think I quite agree with her. You know, when you hear the word sexism, it's all about a belief system. When you have this belief system that a particular sex is more superior to the other, or a particular gender is more superior to the other. Okay, so and it's actually a mindset, a belief system, a mental paradigm, like they say. But if it now manifests, its manifestation can be captured in things like gender discrimination and even gender inequality. These are the 2-3 step manifestations of such a negative belief system, I could say, because the word sexism carries a negative connotation. Because once you encounter that word, or once you engulfed with that kind of mindset, it simply means that you already believe in your mind that there is actually an equality between the two gender we have. Yes.
Exactly, yes. And also we live in a society where, we have things like gender roles and things like that, which further, creates these sexist issues that we have. So I want to know, how does this sexism, how does it manifest, or how does it show differently when it comes to how men are treated and how women are treated?
Anyway, I would not allow her to speak first because
Yeah, it shows in various ways. In our workplaces, it's manifestly evident in the boardroom, in the classroom, in the living room, where there's this disparity in pay, there's disparity in leadership roles, there's disparity in legal rights and safety. Come on, when things happen, when there's insecurity, women and girls, they are the most vulnerable. Okay, and oftentimes, man, in quotes, is naturally selfish. They begin to think about themselves first, forgetting that there are this set of people who are not as strong as they are, who may need help. Then, for the same role being played in the office, a man is being paid higher than a woman. You talk about politics, that's where you see that women are underrepresented and they're under heavy scrutiny when they want to vie. You see a woman who is maybe a divorcee or a single mother, they will scrutinize the woman, condemn her, judge her.
This is something I actually do not really, digest. Whenever we talk about this sexism and gender inequality or gender discrimination, why is it that women always have this victim mentality? That they're always the vulnerable group.
It's not a victim mentality. Thank God you are a data analyst.
Yes.
Then you can just everything we are talking about, they are verifiable. Tell me, in the government of the day, let's talk about the state we are in now.
Okay.
How many, we have 24 legislators. How many are women? 2. Are you telling me that there is only those 2 women that vied or that desire to have tickets? What edged them that are out? Is it that they didn't have money? Is it that they were not qualified members of those political parties for which they vied?
I think
So it's not, nobody is, we're not shouting like unappreciated martyrs,
Yes.
or we're having the victim mentality. No, this is what Igbo calls in Igbo, we say ukunafia or godonafia. I do not need a mirror to view this.
Yeah, I understand actually, but sometimes we take away some variables like cultural belief systems.
We've not come to that.
No, I'm just trying to put it in advance.
Okay.
Because, well, I'm not ruling out the fact that women could be vulnerable in terms of treatment. I have personally done a research about gender discrimination on economic growth, and the results actually reverberates into what you're saying. Because I measured gender inequality with 4 parameters.
Okay.
Inequality in political participation,
Okay.
inequality in education,
Okay.
inequality in healthcare services,
Okay.
and inequality in, what is this other one?
Economics?
Not economics, employment.
Employment, okay.
So when I got the required data and supplied into my statistical machine, the results yielded negative coefficients, meaning that inequality has a negative impact on our economy, actually. But when I got the data never specified whether it was inequality against men or women. It was an objective data. So, but whenever we present this kind of issues, women will always feel that they are actually the victims who are actually.
No, but the truth is that when you do a survey, that was an incomplete. What did you call it?
Research or whatever.
You did it was incomplete.
Was
Or maybe you didn't have gender in mind. You were just because if you had narrowed it to gender, you will find out. I just gave you typical examples. You know, we have, like you mentioned, we'll have these harmful traditional practices that, you know, limits women. See, when you talk about sexism, is something, how do I best describe it? It's something that shapes life, quietly shapes life, limits potentials, and holds back progress. It is there, we cannot deny it. And the more people who are more victimized, overwhelmingly, are women.
No, the problem I have with it, it's actually something that is obvious.
We're not saying that men are not, because there are, when you talk about the stereotypes.
Yes, exactly. Because I was coming to that.
Well, exactly. You know, that's where I wanted to point out, because each time we talk about this gender discrimination, gender inequality, sexism, it always connotes that women are actually the disadvantaged. It could be right or it could be wrong, but objectively, you could say you are right.
It is our reality.
But we have seen a lot of situations where we have seen men also become the vulnerable group.
So tell us what those situations are.
Haven't you gone on social media and seen?
Well, she has already mentioned, you know, where it affects the women already. So you are here, you know, so.
Okay, the truth is that we men carry a lot of things in our minds. The society has been programmed in such a way that nobody wants to hear us in such situation. That's the truth. Imagine a man coming out to say that maybe he's experiencing violence from the wife. They'll see him as a weak person. So we've been shut up. We have been silenced.
It's not that nobody wants to hear you, but it's just that the men folk, they refuse to speak up.
No, because the society, the system has silenced us.
Okay, I want to agree with you to an extent.
Yes.
Because the society has not been fair.
Exactly.
To men.
Exactly.
When you cry, when a man tries to
show emotions.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
Why crying? Are you not a man?
Exactly.
He's dying.
He's dying.
You understand?
Yes.
And then another aspect is where a man maybe finds himself tilting towards a particular profession that is female dominated, like being a caregiver,
or a nurse, or a teacher.
Do you
Yes.
understand? So I want to agree with you on that, but I still maintain that put side by side with what women go through, more people are dealing with us.
Wow, the way she said that. Do you have anything to respond to that?
Well, I could also say that with the recent awakening and recent developments, that paradigm is changing. Yes, women are beginning to come up with a lot of strategies to, beat down sexism or gender inequality or discrimination. It's obvious anyway. My own problem with their strategies is that some of them do not balance it. Some of them think it's actually a feminist movement, whereas it's supposed to be a movement of equality and zero tolerance for sexism.
Well, feminism, that is actually what feminism is about.
It's not supposed to be a blame game.
Exactly.
It's supposed to be an awareness, a sensitization, an action, an advocacy, where we beg for more inclusive policies.
Exactly.
Okay, we beg for, and in our various homes, because see, when you see a bulldog, it was once a puppy. When you see a man in the corridor of power who embezzles, that man was once a child. But the mother maybe didn't teach him accountability. That's why I tell them, if you're my son, my child, and I send you on an errand, if my change is 1 naira, give it to me. If I like, I dash you 1,000 tomorrow. Because early parental influence is difficult to shake off.
That is very much true.
At home, we should now start to model equality in our various homes.
Yes,
we
that is
model
true.
equality and promote inclusive values.
That is actually true. And when we speak of this sexism, most people now have either experienced or witnessed sexist actions, and some of them can be very glaring sexist comments or even behaviors. So in what ways, what are the ways that this act of sexism can be obvious, and in what ways, what are those obvious acts of sexism that are being displayed, and what are those subtle acts of sexism that people might overlook, but they're actually sexist behaviors towards them?
Well, one of the very prominent is the underrepresentation of women in leadership roles, in boardrooms. That one is manifestly everywhere. You understand? And maybe in many workplaces where there's disparity in pay, whereas they are doing the same, they have, handling same roles. And then legal rights, maybe sponsored by tradition or culture, or where a man is allowed, has the right, they will tell you he's polygamous in nature, he's permitted to marry 2 wives, where after telling me to death do us part, the next moment you're bringing another woman, and they condemn polyandry. So why can't I have 2 husbands? If a man should have, see, we have to align these things, respect ourselves. We need to, it's visible in these areas that I've told you. Then in subtle areas, in our everyday treatment, is our everyday reality for millions, especially women and girls, where they are judged, dismissed, and denied opportunities, not because they don't have the abilities, but because of their gender. Let me give you an example. I once entered a shopping mall. As I was coming in, I saw young men. I'm going to be 52 in January, by the way. But because I'm more statured, and more importantly, because I'm a woman, I came in just from the doorpost. Everybody was greeting my younger brother, who I was sure I was like 9 years older than. Like, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Nobody cared to talk to me. I didn't bother anyway. I knew it was based on my gender. The car he was driving was mine.
Are you sure it was based on your gender,
yes,
or based on this
no,
the stature analysis?
No. Do you know whether he's taller than I am?
Well, I don't know. You didn't give us that information.
That's why I'm being categorical about gender.
Okay.
Do you get it?
Yes.
Okay. So they feel a man is here. He's the one who deserves the respect. Do you get it? After everything, I was still the one that paid. It was that particular one that handled. It was when I was paying, he started smiling and say, "Hey, Auntie, go show me love." Oh, I told him, go and get love from the people you greeted. On a night, at the end of the day, I had to part with something. I told him, just be friendly to everyone. Something like that. Those are subtle ones. Those are, even in our various homes, there are subtle ones. Where they will tell him, Kechi, come and sweep this place. And Chike has gone out to play ball. He ate there too. Do you understand? Where they will tell Chike, go and draw well. Oh, the main one. Let him go and draw well.
You see, that is.
So we need to balance all. Yes,
that is where we need to actually address, because role distribution based on gender might not necessarily be because of superiority or inferiority. When there are roles attributed to certain gender, doesn't mean that they were given that role because they were perceived as superior or inferior.
Yeah, but she's answering that based on the subtle acts of sexism, which I asked.
Because see, even at that, a man should know how to cook, and cook when it is necessary. There are times when, maybe let's take a scenario of a husband and the wife puts to bed, needs a postnatal treatment or caregiving, and maybe both mothers, both the in-law and the biological, they are not disposed. A man should be able to make a little thing and give to the wife, not the ones that will just stand there and I don't even know what to do. These things, they start early.
Exactly. So what about you? What do you think are those very blatant acts of sexism and those subtle,
Okay, well, the obvious ones, like she pointed out earlier, is based on career stroke profession. I've seen a woman one time who is a mechanic, and the moment I saw her, I'm like, this is supposed to be a man's work, just because of the way we have been oriented. So when it comes to career,
so that was coming from you now.
Yeah,
you were the one thinking that thought
based on societal programming.
Yes, of course.
Yes,
Yes.
Where I actually teach a lot of students data analysis and research. There is a school close to my house. I'm not going to mention the name of the school. It's actually a nursing school. And when I meet the female students, I'll ask them, how many guys are in your class? How many men are in your class? They'll tell me, well, in a class of 200, there could be like only 4 men, because men perceive that course to be for feminine based. Okay, so that's actually one of the obvious manifestations. Now, the subtle ones are actually a situation whereby you actually go out somewhere, maybe you see 2 persons who are having controversies, who are quarreling, and the lady will be hitting the guy. Bah, bah. Nobody will react. But the moment the man wants to raise his hand and he responds to that, hey, Okwawani, don't beat her. She's a woman, no. It's a subtle manifestation.
Yes.
But even at home too, which actually caused an issue that I had to resolve the other day in terms of parental inheritance distribution. When a dad will share his inheritance and he would say, my male children, he give them and we don't give the ladies. That actually brought one argument we had a certain time, and we analyzed the justification that ladies can marry and go off, but men are meant to stay back even when they have given birth to continue the generational cycle. Okay, so but you discover that some men are doing it, the fathers are distributing the goods to their male children, not because of what I just said now, but purely because of gender sake, and that is part of a manifestation of
it's a blatant manifestation of sexism or discrimination. You cannot disenfranchise your child from maybe your inheritance or something because the person is a girl. Who says my father cannot give me something? My mom, I know the things she inherited from her own father, even though she's married. So we mustn't do that. It's one of those things we are talking about, gender discrimination. Talk about there are some persons, women, who have very good leadership traits, women who can move mountains leadership-wise, women who can handle stuff but will not be given a space. Why? Because they are women.
You're very passionate about this leadership aspect
Do you know why I'm passionate about leadership? There's no society that will be better than the leader. No society is ever better than the leader. So if we are all here and we choose to give him to be the class rep, even when we know that he has a questionable character just because he's the man among us, we're a disaster going somewhere to happen. But if we find out that there are some leadership traits embedded in you, even though you're a woman, even though the other ones we have 9 men here again, we should be able to accord you that respect. Acknowledge the grace upon your life and have you do it, and we'll all be better for it. So I'm passionate about it because I've seen places where things went south because the right person was not the person given the leadership role, and it's all gender-based. So let's look forward to identifying who has what and what it takes to sail the ship, rather than whether he's a man or a
woman. So let's get a bit personal now. You've shared an experience you had of sexism.
Yeah.
Now, is there any other experience you have had or maybe witnessed, and how did you feel about it, or how did you respond to it?
Yes, I like you said, I'm passionate about it. It's because of the very many things I've seen about leadership. Yes. Okay. Yes, there's this family I know, the little business they have, a family business. When at the demise of their father, their mom was handling it. So everybody was busy doing, but when the mom was forced to retire due to age and ill health, the guy who was just I don't know the right word to use, but he's nowhere near a leader. He doesn't have what it takes to sail the ship. It was just and I'm like, what? Is Jobala the only quality you have? That's the only CV you have to make this happen? And yes, that other, their sister, who is still very fat, she was too busy to even look their way. But others knew that this is the woman who handled this thing well. At least, even if she doesn't come every day, but once in a while, is able to give directives, do this, do that. They insisted. The Jobara the whole thing, and everything disappeared. They went with the wind. Do you understand? So I have seen over and again where leadership is everything. Leadership is everything.
But most times I noticed you actually speak from the dimension where you are trying to will I say diffuse or deflect if there's another man who's also qualified to take over the leadership position, because the way you're sounding more like, because it's a woman,
what I'm saying, even if they don't have a woman,
yes,
let's take a scenario where there's no woman in the picture.
Yes.
Now, it's not sexism, but when I talk about leadership, let he who the cap fits wear it. I had to sound that way because the bone of contention was that other brothers say Rapu's sister Odi in charge. Do you understand? And this guy was like, I am Diokpara, and they knew that he was not even near the business when both parents were alive. He didn't want to. He had no passion for it. All he wanted was take the one there and prodigal himself.
I think that is where cultural
do you understand?
Comes in. That's
so,
where culture has to influence whatever we're saying here.
Before we get to the
okay.
the influence of culture
exactly.
in all of this,
Okay.
I want to hear she has shared a personal experience, so I like to hear personal experiences. Either you have witnessed an act of sexism or you have been a victim of sexism.
Okay, like I said initially, when women will always, some women will sound like they are victims or they are the vulnerable group. I've been in a group as one of the admin, and when we give rules in our group admin, either in WhatsApp group or any other group, either physical or online. So we will give a law and say nobody should chat beyond so topic or so time and all. When somebody places a chat, and as that admin, I will delete it. Some of them will say, is it because I'm a woman? That's why people are treating me this way. So that's why I'm being careful for people not to be so consumed with sexism, especially if you're a woman.
So that one is emotional blackmail.
Well, it's still part of the instrument. They use the instrumentality of sexism.
Emotional blackmail.
Yeah, that's what.
You should be able to identify the thin line between sexism and emotional blackmail.
Well, she's using that instrument of sexism to also attack us and say, "Oh, Makanaya Bonwan, is it because we're women? That's why you're treating us this way." I've seen other situations whereby I saw some WhatsApp uploads or some Facebook uploads where a woman was actually hitting her husband with instruments, with bare hands. The man was obviously weaker than the woman. So when I went to the comment section, I was disappointed. You could see women, most women there could not see the absurdity of that act. They were simply saying, yes, hit him too. That's the way they hit us. Instead of them to address what they're seeing obviously and objectively, you could see that bias. You could see that sexism coming in. You could see that retaliatory comments. Like, people could not see that this is gender-based violence. But in that context, as long as the woman is hitting the man, it was okay by them. I think that's not actually right. That's why I said we should be careful to balance this ideology when we try to advance the concept of sexism, gender equality, and stuff like that. Personally, I've not experienced at home. My sisters, I'm actually the last born from my mom's womb. I'm a younger brother to 3 wonderful elder sisters. I've not experienced much of that discrimination. It's only where maybe they are discussing something, they'll tell me, this is not a topic for men. Go out. That kind of treatment. I don't know whether it's discrimination. I don't know whether it's sexism. Sometimes because as a last born, this vulnerability that comes with being a last born, I want to go to them, they'll be like, go to
girls'
room.
We need privacy.
And I will feel rejected. So I don't know that I'll call that one sexism or discrimination. Or gender discrimination. I don't know. So really.
Okay, so let's now talk about how does culture further, create room for sexism? What's the influence culture has, on this sexism and gender discrimination?
Anyway, let me speak now before she speaks because Well, the truth is this, and most people don't want to hear this. Feminists don't want to hear this. People who have gender bias don't want to hear this. Okay? When it comes to the African continent, okay, our ancestors have been accused that they were treating women like rags, which is not actually true. They actually understood the role that each of these gender has. In fact, they actually gave us the definition of, those gender-based roles. And you get what I'm saying? Now, society has created a scenario whereby we obey what the Bible says, that women are the weaker vessels, and that a wife or whoever a woman is should be submissive to whoever that is above her as a husband. The society, our African continent is obeying that law. I'm not talking about those who are taking it to the extreme, or those who are trying to take advantage of that scenario to deal with women or to convert them to slaves. The truth is that under objective analysis, men have a kind of more exalted scenario than women. Not in terms of slavery mentality, but because the Bible even called you people the weaker vessels. So that weakness doesn't mean that you are slaves, but we should be careful to strike this equality that we are looking at or that we're trying to achieve, because it's going to really result in something blatant and negative. So the society has it in such a way that women, we are not trying to achieve equality, but we are trying to define a role and to also protect you people as the weaker vessels. But some of them don't feel protected. They feel you are overprotecting me. You don't want me to do this and that. Yes, there could be scenarios whereby some men are taking advantage of that, superiority. But
I wish I would understand what he means by weaker vessels. Yes, I do want to, because I want to say that this is like a paralysis of analysis.
Okay.
Yes, because you're taking it out of context. Could you please tell us what the Bible meant when it said that women are weaker vessels?
Well, I don't want us to go into biblical analysis because it has to do with subjective
But without it,
interpretations.
you shouldn't have said
Okay.
they are treating us because we are weaker vessels. That means you understand the
You know,
concept of weaker
what I want to know actually is, like I said, how does culture influence this sexism? So is that where you're heading at with this?
Yes. The
Okay.
culture, because I'm an African. I need to speak from African continent and culture.
Okay.
I didn't grow I didn't grow in America or Europe. I grew in Nigeria. I grew in Igbo land. In Igbo land, the culture did not create a room for sexism or gender discrimination. The culture created a scenario for gender roles and distribution of labor. But people who have misused that paradigm are the ones to blame. The culture by nature, Igbo culture, you are Igbo, right? All of us are Igbo.
Of course
yeah?
I am.
The Igbo culture created that scenario whereby that equality that this Gen Z wants to strike now is not supposed to be there. So the Igbo culture created that scenario whereby a man is meant to be ahead of the woman, not in terms of slavery nature. I want you guys to get the thing difference, because when I say such things, people will think that maybe I'm part of those that enhances women discrimination and stuff like that.
Do you have something?
Okay, yes, I really do. I think that culture and tradition has, in a very significant way, sponsored sexism and gender discrimination.
Okay.
Yes, this is true because when think about the inequality they promote, they feel that the woman is less human. They feel that a woman's place is in the kitchen, irrespective of her latent potentials, her latent talents, irrespective of the traits she has. Or, they feel that a woman should be at the backyard, cracking nuts.
I don't think any culture promotes that.
Wait.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello.
We have to say culture promotes that. When we talk about culture, we talk about religion.
Okay. Yeah.
So culturally, in Africa, they feel that a woman is somewhat lower than a man. What else is sexism? The definition of sexism is a belief or feeling that one is more superior to the other gender. What else? It's not ambiguous. It's written in black and white. We all know this. So, like I said earlier, this is not a blame game that we're here for. I'm sufficiently convinced that there's no better description of sexism than that our culture portrays. Do you understand? So, but what we are here for is for an awareness. Like one of those things we'll have to do to stop it. That's what we're doing here.
Yeah, but
an awareness, the place of education, the place of inclusive policies and values. Think about it in church. They will tell you that a woman is not supposed to speak. There are women who are more evangelical, who are highly spirited than men.
Are you a Christian?
I am.
Okay.
I am. And like I said, they quoted it out of context. That's why I said paralysis of analysis. Your ability to extract a portion of the Bible, and it's not newspaper, for God's sake, that we're reading. If you lose Rhema, if you're not highly spirited, you may not interpret a version of a portion of Bible. It's not the newspaper, it's not literature, it's not Chinua Achebe. It's something that was written with the inspiration of God. That's why some persons, some women, push their husbands into trouble by saying, he who cannot provide for his family is worse than infidel. When you provide for your family, are you not a helper? That's not what the scripture meant there. The scripture was talking about the widows. Read it before you interpret any scripture. Read before and after. Don't just jump into a passion and not know the prelude or what transpired later. It was talking about the widows and said that those people who neglect the widows, their own widows, that they are worse than infidels. God is not an author of confusion. He will not bring a helpmeet for you by virtue of a woman to help you. He who findeth a wife findeth a good, and that woman will be the one that will cross leg and be telling you that he who doesn't provide for the family is worse than an infidel. No, it's not true. So it's out of God. That's what I'm talking about. The Bible, you know, we need to understand that there's so many doctrinal confusions. They will tell you you should cover your head, and some persons will tell you my hair has already covered my head. The Bible said cover your head. We're not in for that. So we're not here for a blame game. We want to chart a way forward. Culturally, we have seen that before now, women are relegated to the background. Do you understand? Women, there's this obvious inequality between men and women. But we're saying now that we know better, now that we have listened, now that we have read, now that we have interacted, now there's an international best practice, can we now bring our women and expose them to education, knowing that education is a veritable tool to fight poverty? Do we still have to keep them at the backyard and tell them you're 16, you're 14, you started menstruating, it's time to get married? Do you understand? We don't have to make any human being look or feel less of himself. Gender discrimination. When that man is crying, allow him to vent. Allow him, when he finishes venting, pacify him. Don't make him feel less of himself. That's gender discrimination or sexism, that's stereotype.
Now,
Why
before
I told you about women, stereotype. Wine now epitomizes everything negativity. That's wrong.
Exactly.
And these things were culturally,
programmed.
Yeah. They were culturally programmed.
Now, we've spoken about culture, we've spoken about religion. What about the media? What role has media, TV, music, social media, what role does media have in, influencing this sexism, reinforcing or challenging, or even further escalating the issue of sexism that we have now?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just like programs like this. That's the role they have to engage in massive reorientation. Like the studies I did, like I said before, 5 months ago, I conducted a research on the impact of gender discrimination and economic growth in Nigeria. And I said I measured it with 4 parameters: education-wise, employment, healthcare, and what's the other one? Whatever. There are 4 of them. So when I ran the regression analysis, I found out that the 4 of them have negative impact on economic growth.
Employment.
Yes, employment, exactly. So all of them yielded negative coefficients, meaning that gender discrimination and sexism in Nigeria is actually affecting our economy negatively. Then I began to take another global perspective, and I found out that countries like Iceland is actually the country that's practicing majorly close to zero sexism, because they have 93.5% gender equality, followed by 2 other countries, Finland and Norway, around 87.5%. Okay, now Nigeria is at 65% as of this year. As of 2024, 2020 they were 63%. But almighty America is at 74.7% in terms of sexism and gender equality. So what I'm trying to say is that the media should be able to conduct such researches and share the secret of countries that are experiencing low sexism and low inequality, and disburse the information to people. They have to massively share their findings on air using strategies like these talks and stuff like that. So that's the role of the media. They should share the relevant statistics and the strategies that people must engage, or to rearrange the minds of both men and female to minimize their tendencies of sexism.
But do you think that the media also contributes to sexism in their portrayal of men and women in some movies or music or things like that?
I want to believe strongly that they do. Yes, they do. they contribute, you know. Think about, and funny enough, the women themselves, they're not even helping matters. Think about a music movie. See a man well dressed, carrying himself, his carriage is enviable, and this a babe, almost nude, almost nude, you know, scantily clad. But the guys, they're there. You know, they would even wear this one and wear another jacket. But the girls now, they will just have one G-string themselves. And it's so demeaning. It's so demeaning. So if there's a way they can start censoring all these things, you know, sometimes there's an Igbo adage that says, no, bro, so if they do not have dignity for themselves, let's even tell them they are representing women. Do you understand? Let there be a limit to some things. And media, like in movies, the movie producers, they also have a role to play. The authors, talk about the Association of Nigerian Authors, they have a role to play when they have like seminars, workshops, and brainstorm, have cross-pollinate ideas on how do we stop this. Then boom, they should go and start, the creative writers should start writing on things that will, maybe a story that will end up showing that it's not good to discriminate.
Okay, so because of time.
Another presentation of sexism and discrimination is this program. We have two ladies and one man.
No.
One, two, against one. Why didn't you pick another man?
No. Well, okay. So because of time, just a final thing. What's one thing you think you and other people too watching this should do differently to create a more equitable environment, a more respectable and equitable environment for all genders?
Okay, I think that everyone has a role to play in dismantling this wall that has been built by sexism. You know, like I said earlier, whether it's in the boardroom, whether it's in the classroom, be it in the living room, we have to model equity, starting from our various homes. Starting from our children are like young tendrils. They go where you guide them. If you misguide them, the society will be worse for it. And we have to also promote inclusive values. If we do this, we are not just killing gender discrimination. We are making sure that we build a society for everyone, regardless of their gender, to thrive.
Yes, I'm in alignment with what she said.
Okay.
It starts from the home. It starts from the upbringing. Like in my own house, we try our very best to practice zero gender inequality. I'm training my son to respect the ladies. I'm training my daughters to respect men. They see me respect their mother. They see their mother respect me. There are no roles in my family. I can go to the market, my wife can go. There's no specific role given to anybody to play. So all I'm trying to say is that every father out there, every mother out there should understand the fact that it starts from childhood upbringing. Put into your children that mentality of zero sexual discrimination.
And in one sentence, if we can teach our girls that there's no ceiling there, there's no limit to what they can do, and teach our boys that much more than strength, or that the real strength is learning empathy and respect.
All right, thank you so much for joining in this conversation. Very enlightening and interesting. Thank you so much once again for coming on the show. Thank you. Okay, we'll go on a short break now. When we come back, Gender Perspective continues.
Every second, every minute, every day, news is breaking. Events occur and there are new developments. At Signature TV, we follow these stories objectively, bringing all sides without bias, explaining the complex issues, breaking down the numbers, and investigating the issues behind the news. Anywhere and everywhere, near or far, wherever the news is, we will be there. Signature TV. News in your pocket.
Understanding sexism and gender discrimination requires not only recognizing their existence, but also challenging the many misconceptions that surround them. And it is important that we debunk common beliefs that often distort the reality of gender inequality. These myths can minimize real experiences, justify unfair treatment, and slow progress towards equity. By contrasting these misconceptions with evidence-based facts, we aim to foster a deeper and more accurate understanding of the issues because meaningful changes begin with awareness and truth. So let's look at the myths and facts surrounding sexism and gender discrimination. Welcome back. Well, sexism and gender discrimination are not just relics of the past, they are persistent realities that demand continued attention and action. Over the years, significant strides have been made to address these issues. Movements like feminism and campaigns have brought global attention on gender inequality. Legislative reforms in many countries now protect against gender-based discrimination in education, employment, and public life. Combating these issues requires a multifaceted approach, including education, policy reform, and cultural change. And with these, societies can move forward towards a more just and inclusive future for all genders. Well, on that note, we have come to the end of today's edition of the program. Make sure to stay tuned to Signature TV. We are on SLTV channel 265 and we are live on YouTube 24/7. Till next time, I am UCHENNA CHIMDI-OLUOHA.